Greetings, friends, fellow patriots, and fellow citizens, and even non-citizens, and welcome to this week's edition of the We the People Convention Weekly News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. I'm the host of this podcast, and I'm the president of the We the People Convention organization. And this podcast and our website and our texts and our emails and our donations to other conservative groups and all of our social media are paid for by the generous donors to the We the People Convention. And we thank all of you who have supported us over the last 16 years in our fight to protect and defend individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. Welcome to all of you, particularly those who are new to the podcast, who are coming in via the social media that we've been putting out on Instagram and Facebook and Getter and Gab and MeWe and all those things. Not TikTok. We've been thrown off of TikTok again. But also welcome to all of you who've been so loyal to us for the last 16 years and have helped us win so many key fights, including electing President Donald Trump just about a year ago, right? This is the last Saturday of October 2025. A year ago, we were facing the most important election in the history of America, and what a different time it was indeed. So we are thankful. We thank God Almighty for the fact that we were able to win that election last year and that President Trump is now implementing the Make America Great Again agenda, the America First agenda that we voted for. And while things have been crazy and intense and the world's on fire and our country's on fire, we are on the right path. We are restoring our values. We are making America great again by just having common sense and closing our borders and, cutting costs and drilling so we bring down energy prices, so that brings down all prices. And we're trying to end wars and reduce our spending on foreign wars. We're doing a lot of good, but boy, the fight continues. And we're certainly going to talk about that in this week's podcast. So welcome to all of you. Thank you, for being with us today. And I think you'll really enjoy the podcast that we put together for you. Let's start where, the week began, which was a week ago, last Saturday. Today is August 25th. Last Saturday, the geriatric No Kings protest proves that the left has lost the youth of America. And so this was, something we were concerned about. Fortunately, there was no significant violence. That was good. That was good. And hats off to the people who protested. You have a right to protest. You can make whatever statement you want. But the bottom line is we were hoping for no violence and we got that, and that was a good thing. What did it all mean? What was it all about? So let's just take a little look at what happened. It's difficult to think of a more effective way to illustrate the moral and intellectual emptiness of the American left than to have them march around demanding an end to an institution our founding fathers abolished 250 years ago. This is how the official No Kings website described what happened on Saturday. On October 18th, more than 7 million of us rose up at more than 2,700 events in all 50 states and cities worldwide to say America has no king and the power belongs to the people. These people are a little late to the party, as Thomas Jefferson would probably point out, were he still with us. What they actually protesting, of course, has nothing to do with kings. It's just another mass outbreak of Trump derangement syndrome. As Brett Hume phrased it on X, the No King rallies are mostly a protest against a man who sought power 3 times through democratic elections and enacted his major agenda items by majority vote of the democratically elected members of Congress. Some king, he laughed. Beta Unger Sargon, who's becoming a real powerful voice in conservative media, said the left isn't protesting a king, but they're fellow Americans. They were protesting you and I. They aren't standing up for democracy. They're protesting against it. They seem to have forgotten that Donald Trump was democratically elected less than a year ago with a popular majority. And indeed, that's what they want you to not remember, that they're protesting you and I. They're protesting what we did a year ago. The point here is that these ridiculous people aren't doing their own thinking. Instead, they are following the lead of the leftist organizers of the No Kings event, including Communist Party USA, Young Communist League, Democratic Socialists of America, Antifa, Indivisible, Move On, Ad Infinitum. Countless ex-posters went to the protests and asked people why they were protesting President Trump, and most answers were just dumb. I don't know. We don't like him. That's the word around here, said one protester. Yeah, that's about the depth of their, intellectual argument about what they were protesting. Then the issue is, how significant was it? How big was it? And the answer is, it wasn't significant at all. It didn't change anything. Didn't change anybody's minds. Basically, like the first No Kings event, it was ignored. How many people went to this farce? I'd gather a few examples before I went to bed last night. NBC reports there were some 3,000 marching in Boston, a city of about 676,000 people. That's 0.443% of the good people of Boston decided to participate. In Huntsville, Alabama, a city of about 300,000 people, they managed to gather around 1,200 for their performance. Folks, my admittedly rusty math tells me they got around 0.4% of the city's population. Reports from other cities that I checked were as similar paltry nature, usually smaller percentage than these three examples. Pulling back, the broader view doesn't help those numbers. The immensely reliable, accurate NBC reports that No Kings organizers claim to have gathered an impressive number of around 7 million marchers nationwide. I'm not going to impugn the honesty of the organizers by suggesting they pulled their numbers out of thin air, but let's go with what's given. If there's 347 million people in the United States, and 7 million protested, that's 2%. It's a non-event. And it shows that they don't have popular support and that they're not going to intimidate people into thinking that they do because we exposed them. So that was a good thing for our country because it showed that if Donald Trump were a king, they wouldn't have been allowed to have their protests. Their own protest proves that they had nothing to protest. So what is this really all about? What are they really upset about? Well, I posted this story at WeThePeopleConvention.org this week and sent texts and emails to you. And if you don't get our texts and emails, just go to WeThePeopleConvention.org and click on to sign in to our text and email sheets. Supreme Court rulings are undoing decades of infringement on presidential powers. I have talked about this with you guys in the past. And you need to understand this is one of the most significant things about Donald Trump's presidency. The fact of the matter is that since Watergate, that the Congress and then the bureaucracy has been used to destroy presidential powers. And President Trump is moving to the Supreme Court all these challenges about birthright citizenship and about impoundment, the right for the president to say, we're not going to spend this money even though Congress allocated it. The president's ability to rule over the executive branch. He's the head of executive branch. And so all these lawsuits you're seeing in these radical left federal judges in these small areas who are saying, Trump can't deport these people. Trump can't close USAID. He can't fire this person. They're all being overturned by the Supreme Court. And this is critical to you and I. This is critical if we want to protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, because a strong president, his job is to do that. That's his job. So let me just read a little bit from this article. In recent months, the Supreme Court has been quietly reshaping the balance of power in Washington, and the shifts could make one of the most consequential constitutional course corrections in modern history. Well, the headlines have focused on social issues and partisan clashes. A series of decisions from the Roberts Courts have been steadily dismantling the administrative state's grip on executive power. Together, these rulings amount to a profound reassertion of the presidency's constitutional authority, one that challenges decades of bureaucratic overreach and unelected rulemaking. At the heart of the shift lies the court's willingness to roll back doctrines that have long empowered agencies to operate with near autonomy. Most notably, the court's recent decision curbing the Chevron deference, the legal principle that courts should defer to agencies' interpretation of vague laws, has sent shockwaves through the federal bureaucracy. It basically says, no, the EPA, the Labor Department, you don't get to make law. The Congress has to make the law. And if what they put out isn't clear enough, then Congress has to fix it. You can't. For decades, Chevron allowed agencies like the EPA, CDC, and Department of Education to effectively write the law under the guise of interpretation. By striking down this deference, the Supreme Court has restored judicial oversight and placed the responsibility for lawmaking back to where it belongs, with Congress and the president. In decisions involving the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau and the Federal Trade Commission, justices have underscored that agencies must remain accountable to the elected head of the executive branch. In practical terms, this means the White House can now more directly control rulemaking, spending, and enforcement priorities, something presidents from both parties have long sought but were denied by entrenched bureaucracies. So that's why the left is pushing back. That's why they're calling him a king. You know why? Because Donald Trump is acting like a president. We can't have that. We want figurehead presidents like Barack Obama and like Joe Biden. We the left, who basically took over the bureaucracy. They are the people who run the government in their minds, not the people you elect. We can't have a president that fires us or tells us what to do. And this is the clash. And this is huge, because what we've learned is that our government doesn't work for us. It works against us. It rules over us. And Donald Trump and the courts are trying to correct that. And that's why they had the No Kings rally in reality. Okay. And we're going to look deeper into that. So the shutdown is now continuing. And I've told you that this is a tactic that the Democrats are using as a tactic. Now, we're happy about that. This is an article that I have that says the longer the shutdown lasts, the better. Okay? And we're going to talk about that side of the coin, but then there's another side of the coin. We have no idea how the government shut down now in its fourth week and the second longest in history will end, or how. But what is increasingly clear is how badly Democrats miscalculated on this one. Consider three bits of news this week. First, the shutdown isn't hurting Republicans. In fact, Reuters Ipsos poll showed that President Trump's approval rating has ticked up by 2 points to 42% since the shutdown started. Other polls find it unchanged. The same Reuters poll showed that the public is mostly split on who deserves the blame, Democrat, Republican, but that's a change from the past when it's always been the Republicans' fault. It's always been the Republicans' fault. Second, the GOP isn't cowering in fear. I don't know what there is to negotiate, Senate Leader John Thune said at a meeting with fellow senators at the White House this week. Open up the government first, he said, and then we can talk about health care and things like that. They shouldn't negotiate because they have the upper hand on messaging. The Democrats are holding the country hostage because they want to borrow and spend $1.5 trillion on health care for illegals, Obamacare for the well-to-do, and a host of woke programs the general public doesn't want. Plus, we can't afford it. Third, and perhaps most stunning, is a Rasmussen poll also put out this week that finds 51% of likely voters want the government to remain shut down, including 31% who strongly approve of keeping it that way. And I would be in that category. Perhaps you would be as well. Only 41% say they disapproved of continuing it. So it's true that that majority is because 2/3 of the Democrats want the government shut down because they hate Trump and they're using the shutdown to try to stop him, right? They want to stop the ICE deportations. They want to stop the surges of National Guard into these blue cities to stop crime. But in this case, keeping the government shut down gives the president the opportunity to permanently shrink government, a prospect that appears to delight Trump. Yes, the shutdown is disruptive, but the longer it goes on, the more people who aren't on the government payroll will realize their lives aren't being affected in one way or another. As we noted in this space at the start of the current shutdown, nearly 70% of government is on autopilot and so is unaffected by the shutdown. And much of the rest, what makes up the federal government, is waste, fraud, and abuse. Okay, so what's happening is on November 1st, the money runs out for these CHIP grants, CHIP is food stamps. And it's about $8 billion a month. And basically, a week from today, people that get food stamps won't get them. And that's going to cause a big problem. So the Dems are trying to say Donald Trump has a reserve fund to pay the chip, and he's not doing it because he wants to hurt you. The fact of the matter is that reserve fund is only $5 billion, not $8 billion. And something just came out this morning that says it's illegal for the Agriculture Department to use it. So we're going to see if this forces the Democrats to come and vote to open the government. Now, I have an editorial here by a guy named Bill Wilson that I want to share with you because I think this is where we're headed. And it's not a good place. It's not a good place. As congressional Democrats shut down the federal government enters the fourth week, the question in most people's mind is simple. What does the end game look like? What are the realistic outcomes? It is clear that a view of success in this battle is vastly different on each side. There is no obvious center position. The Republicans have made their endgame obvious. Fund the government at the current levels until November 21st and allow time to negotiate differences on policy points. The Democrats, unfortunately, are not as open on what their endgame is. Simply put, they have entered into a winner-take-all fight in which the only way out is complete capitulation by the president and Republicans. It is not realistic. In fact, it is delusional and untethered from reality as one can get. The president can't do that. The Republicans can't say, we're going to just give you $1.5 trillion to come back. They can't do that. But that's the point. That's the point. But these are not stupid people. What if that is not their real goal? What if it is the back and forth and deception are part of a totally different game? One is one of a much bigger prize. What is that prize? The total destruction of America. The No Kings rally was funded by the Communist Chinese and the Marxist left globally. The goal was to destroy America. Well, how do you get there? If the lefties cannot honestly think they can get the temporary Obamacare subsidies made permanent and understand that health care for illegals is a toxic position to be struck with, what are they after? As the shutdown continues, pressure will start to build. Federal workers will miss more paychecks. The administration will need to scurry to find the funds to pay the military and the government equivalent of collecting a change in the sofa cushions to pay the bills. States will start to pull down Medicaid, and food stamps will begin to dry up. In short, the military and socialist welfare state will start to seize up. That is the point where the hard left believes they can find leverage on President Trump. They see this set of conditions as the ultimate win. Crashing our government, crashing our economy is the ultimate win. Either nervous, weakening Republicans in the Senate will surrender and give the Democrats what they demand, or President Trump will be faced with an ominous choice. Either suffer the anger of the color revolution mob looking for promised social grift, or take decisive action. And that decisive action can only be declaration of an emergency order that becomes tantamount to martial law. Is their goal, when they protest No Kings, to force Donald Trump to act like a king, like a tyrant, like a dictator? Is that their goal? The neo-Marxists in the mainstream media and the Democratic will have their authoritarian dictator they have pushed and shoved and contrived to force President Trump to exercise the ultimate executive power. That, they believe, will ensure their success in 2026 elections and beyond. In their fevered minds, it will be the end of the Trump restoration. It would be the high water mark of MAGA, allowing the globalists and their trolls in the government and academia and Hollywood to begin to take back what the people pried from their death grip. Provocation? Provoke the president to take matters in his own hands under his oath to defend the nation from all foreign enemies, foreign and domestic. And when he does that, all hell will break loose. That could be what they're trying to do. And President Trump is going to have to be very, very careful here. Very careful. So what could he do? Well, if that's truly what they're trying to do, which is to cause so much pain that people are willing to riot and then force Trump to act like a dictator, what could he do? Well, Thune could change the rules of the Senate and say, we can now pass budgets with 50% of the vote. Now, people go berserko on that, and in the future, that could come back to hurt us, but that would stop them. That would put them in a bind. I don't know what the answers are, okay? I don't know, how this really works out. But, you've got to understand these are serious problems. Serious problems that President Trump is saying. And the left, they can't win anymore. With the redistricting that's going on, we'll talk more about that. They're not going to win in 2026. They're not going to win in 2028. They may never win again. So are they going for broke? We will see. Now, let me just put this story out there because this is part of the issue. Employer health coverage costs near $27,000 as weight loss drugs premium increases. So what is this about? Well, employer healthcare costs in the United States have reached record levels with family premiums averaging $26,993 this year, a 6% increase from 2024, according to a new report released today. Employees now contribute an average of $6,850 for their plans, up $1,400 from last year. So your employer is going to pay $27,000 for your health care. You're gonna pay $6,850 of that. The findings attribute much of the rise to higher prescription drug costs, particularly the weight loss medications and diabetes treatments. Among large employees, 36% of prescription drugs is a major driver of rising premiums, while 22% blame the cost of new medications. This is quite an alarm bell going off. With GOPs increasing hospital prices, tariffs, and other factors, we expect employer premiums to rise more sharply this year. So what's going on is you got multiple things, and healthcare is the heart of this. Obamacare is a disaster. It's a disaster. And the left wants the Republicans to put back in trillions of dollars of money to keep funding Obamacare, which never should have gotten this out of control as it is. And then your regular healthcare costs are going up and they want more government subsidies. It's all backwards. And I got an email from AFP where they had this important thing. Letting these wasteful COVID subsidies expire, which should expire at the end of this year. There's a whole bunch of subsidies that went out during COVID to basically make people who didn't qualify for Obamacare to qualify. And that now expires at the end of this year. And the left wants the Republicans to reinstate them going forward. You can't afford it. To hear the Democrats tell it, the same people who created Obamacare, that would be a catastrophe with soaring premiums and mass coverage losses. Fears of exploding premiums are overstated. Subsidies at mass or average $20,000 premiums would shrink slightly, but would still cover roughly 80% of the cost, with the lowest income enrollees paying only a little bit more, about $1 or $2 per day. While some may drop coverage rather than pay a little more, many have other subsidized options like employer plans or Medicaid. Letting the extra subsidies expire is not a catastrophe. It's common sense. Making them permanent, as Democratic leaders are demanding, would amount to a massive and costly bailout of a program that has failed by every measure. And we, the Tea Party, started out fighting Obamacare because we knew it was a disaster. Government health care would be more expensive, it would be worse health care, and it was a liberty issue. And now the chickens are coming home to roost, and Republicans cannot, and President Trump can never surrender on this. The bottom line is what the Democrats are up to isn't about improving Obamacare. It's a trap to push Republicans into endorsing it and then using that vote to retake Congress next year, right? So we're in this vice. And so, we just got to understand that this is the plan. And it's basically extortion, and we can't allow it. We've got to be strong. We've got to outsmart them. But you can tell that the Democrats aren't serious about this. That they know that they can't win the shutdown based on what they're saying. That they want $1.5 trillion for illegals. Okay, so what did they do? All week, you heard no talk about the shutdown. All you heard about was Donald Trump is tearing down the White House. He's tearing down the people's house. He's destroying the White House, just like he's destroying America. It was insane. It was ludicrous. On The View this week, every single day, that's all they talked about. Why? To distract you. To distract you. Now, fortunately, we kept our messaging straight, and there was this little clip on social media, on X and Facebook and everything, that showed Oh, wait a minute. Barack Obama spent more money to remodel the White House when he was president, and he used tax dollars to do it, unlike Trump. It was insane. Here's the clip.
Sounds like you're building another wing to the White House, but we appreciate you keeping your focus.
You can't even imagine, TJ. It's going to happen for the next 2 years. All of the banging, the jackhammering, the dust, the confusion, the noise of all places to do construction is happening right here, the front lawn of the White House.
It's a 4-year renovation project. Estimated cost, $376 million.
There you have it. Barack Obama did the same thing. They didn't say a word. They applauded. Oh, Barack Obama's a great guy. Donald Trump does it? Oh, it's horrible that Donald Trump is actually fixing the White House. And he's raising the money to do it. And they bitched about that. Oh, these oligarchs like Meta and stuff gave money for the $225 million or whatever. They're just distracting you. Don't let them distract you. The shutdown is the Schumer shutdown. It's the Democrats' shutdown. It is they who are going to hurt people. And you need to keep making that clear to everyone you know. We must always win the narrative war. That's our job. Okay? But you can see, I hope I've helped you see what they're really trying to do here. And it's scary, folks. It's scary. Okay? Then this was scary too. U.S. debt tossed $38 trillion for the first time, worsened by government shutdown. Folks, this is the thing that is scaring the heck out of all of us. And let me put this in context, because how fast this is happening should scare you as much as that it's happening. The U.S. gross national debt has surpassed $38 trillion for the first time, the U.S. Department of Treasury data shows. The country's mounting debt comes as the government remains closed, disrupting the economy as hundreds of thousands of federal workers go unpaid. Government shutdowns can boost the national debt because they delay economic activity and postpone financial decisions, while pausing federal programs and starting them up again can also increase costs. The Office of Budget Management estimated that the 2013 U.S. government shutdown cost $2 billion in lost worker productivity. Now, $2 billion isn't a lot in a $38 trillion thing, but it does, cause you to understand that this is not good. Reaching $38 trillion in debt during the government shutdown is the latest troubling sign that lawmakers are not meeting their basic fiscal duties. It seems like we are adding debt faster than ever, and that's because we are. Now get this. We passed $37 trillion 2 months ago. 2 months ago. And the pace we're on is twice as fast as the rate of growth in 2000. The U.S. debt reached $34 trillion in January 2024, $35 trillion in July of 2024, $36 trillion in November 24, just last year, 12 months ago, and that's $38 trillion, and it's going to go to $39 trillion. Folks, we got to stop this. This is the biggest threat to us. So I posted an important video for you to watch at WeThePeopleConvention.org. This is a video of Glenn Beck. And it's really interesting. It's really interesting video because he basically says, we're screwed. We're broke as a joke, folks. And Donald Trump, as you've noticed in his first term and in this term, he is not about cutting. He believes in debt. Well, why? Because he was a builder. You borrow money to build a building. But you get out of that debt, you pay it off by growing out of it. The building becomes more valuable, right? Glenn Beck in this video, which is in our website, our video section of the WeThePeopleConvention.org website, is only 13 minutes long. And Beck is proposing some pretty dramatic and interesting things. And it's tied around the price of gold. Most of you guys know gold is soaring. It's like $4,400 an ounce now. And basically what Beck is saying is that he's getting clues from the Trump administration that they're going to, the U.S. supposedly has, 20 million pounds of gold or something like that. And it's valued at $35 an ounce. he thinks that Trump and the Treasury Secretary Bessent is going to basically revalue the U.S. gold reserves to rebalance our debt. Then you've heard me talk about this and really strongly when there was these talks about from Lutnick and some of these other guys that the U.S. government owns like 247 million acres of land or something that's worth trillions and trillions of dollars. And that they never count that when calculating our debt. Our debt is $38 trillion. What are our assets? That's a balance sheet. Assets and debt, what's your net worth? Our net worth is trillions of dollars in the plus. And Beck is saying that they're going to revalue their gold, they're going to reset our balance sheet, and then they're going to start selling some of this land. And he talks about, because remember, we tried to sell some land a few months ago, and the left went berserk. They're selling the national parks. They're selling land to people who are going to destroy our federal lands. Shut up. They're not going to sell Yellowstone. They're going to sell millions of acres of lands that have minerals on them that we're doing nothing with. Well worth your time to watch that 13-minute video. I hope he's right, because folks, I'm just telling you, there's no way out of this other than something like what Beck's talking about. Because you've seen Congress isn't cutting a dime. And they're not going to. Well, if they don't cut spending, how the hell do we get out of this mess? That's the threat to our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity that has to be addressed. And we're hoping that President Trump, with the smartest cabinet in the history of our country, can figure this out. Because otherwise, folks, we're doomed. We're doomed. And you want evidence of that? How about this evidence? Donor gives $130 million to cover shortfall and troop pay during shutdown. So think about that. We've got so much problems that we need to have private individuals pay our troops. President Donald Trump said on October 23rd that an anonymous donor has sent the federal government a $130 million check to cover the shortfall in military troop pay during the ongoing government shutdown. He called us the other day and he said, I'd like to contribute to any shortfall you have because of the Democratic shutdown. I'd like to contribute personally, contribute any shortfall you may have with the military because I love the military and I love the country. And if there's a shortfall, I'll contribute to pay it down. Trump said the donor, a friend of his, sent the federal government a $130 million check on Thursday, but the man does not want to be named. Now, I've heard people speculate that that was Elon Musk. I don't know. I'm not sure if you can keep that secret because I would think it's a FOIA thing. Well, first of all, we're the left-wing billionaires to bail our government out for anything. No, they just take money, right? And so I think it's a tremendous thing and again, don't get me wrong, $130 million is real money, even to a billionaire, but it's about 13% of what they have, okay? And they'll make that up in the stock market like in the next 2 years. So, yeah, they deserve credit, and I think that's wonderful, but it really shouldn't have to happen. And it's just wrong that we're in this bad of a situation. So it gets worse because I don't even understand this. You guys can write to me and help me understand this because my son sent this to me and was like, what the hell? The U.S. Army has turned to private equity for infrastructure funding. What? The U.S. Army has turned to private equity. Two top White House officials met Wall Street investors last week, part of a Trump administration effort to enlist the $13 trillion private capital industry in public financing. The Army Secretary told the Financial Times that he wanted $150 billion in capital expenditures. So I'm thinking like this is building bases, buying equipment over the next decade, but only had a budget of $15 billion. So he needed outside investment. Military spending is growing across the West, and private firms are benefiting. The EU spent a record $402 billion on defense last year, up 19% year on year, and that figure is expected to continue to rise. One military-focused index has seen its value doubled in the last 12 months. So explain this to me. We have $1 trillion military budget, and we've got to go to private equity firms to borrow money to buy tanks? What? And then he says he has a $15 billion budget, but isn't that annual? So over the next decade, isn't that $150 billion? Now, is he saying, is the defense secretary, Army secretary saying that, well, we'd like to speed that up and build all 150 billion of that infrastructure right now and then pay it off over the next 10 years? I don't know. Please explain this to me, because I don't get it. We are funding the military in spades, and we need to bring the cost of the military down. This is what's driving me crazy. Folks, we're building unmanned fighter jets that are beating F-16s piloted by men. Right now, Anduril has it in the air. Drones are cheap. We're spending millions of dollars on Tomahawk missiles. I forget what they cost. I don't know, $30 million each. And you can build drones for a few $1,000s or $10,000. The cost of our military should be going down, not going up. And it's just, we've got to fix this. Just like we've got to fix Social Security and Medicare and all these entitlement programs. Or we're going to go broke. We are broke. We're broke. And so now we're going to the equity markets. It's just nuts. So why is this all happening? Well, because the war in Ukraine keeps going and it's threatening to turn into World War III. And so Putin was supposed to meet with Trump. I announced that last week. They're going to meet in Hungary. Well, now that looks like that's off. So Trump has put on these huge sanctions on Russian oil giants, trying to bring Putin to the table. Russia reacted with fury on Thursday after the United States imposed sweeping sanctions on two of its largest oil companies and moved directly targeting the Kremlin's most critical source of revenue that world leaders say keeps the war in Ukraine going. This marks the first economic punishment on Moscow by President Donald Trump since his return to the White House in January, as he seeks to pressure Russia and Ukraine to pause the fighting along current front lines. The sanctions also added to the uncertainty surrounding the proposed peace summit between Trump and Putin in Budapest. While the bilateral relations have been further strained, the White House maintains that the meeting is not completely off the table. Well, that's not like it's on the table. And Russia is saying these sanctions aren't going to hurt us. If they sanction the Russian oil companies, the price of oil is going to go up, which hurts you and I, okay? And unless we replace it with domestic production, which they're trying to do. But if the price of oil goes up, Russia sells less oil, but it makes more money. How's this going to help? And so Russia is answering by building up their nuclear forces in the Arctic, claiming that they're getting ready for war with NATO and with Europe. And while there's going to be a meeting, this article came out that there's going to have a meeting in Miami between Witkoff and Kirill Dmitry, Russian President Vladimir Putin's special presidential representative for investment and economic cooperation. They're going to meet in Florida. But the fact of the matter is, we think the globalists want war with Russia. And this story in the conservative treehouse kind of talks to that. EU is going to have their NATO war against Russia with or without President Trump, and it's getting worse. It gets worse. On Monday and Tuesday, Russian oil refineries in NATO countries, Hungary and Romania, suddenly and simultaneously have mysterious explosions and catastrophic fires. On Wednesday, NATO head Mark Rutte comes to visit President Trump in the White House, and at the end of the day, the same Russian company, Lukoil, whose refinery exploded in Romania, suddenly becomes sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury. These events are not disconnected. President Trump then disputes a Wall Street Journal report, further saying he did not give approval, nor does he want to know where NATO long-range missiles are coming from that were launched from Ukraine into Russia this week. He doesn't want to know. Alarmingly, both the Wall Street Journal and President Trump are seemingly correct. President Trump did not give authorization. However, he did cede authority to NATO to make independent decisions about long-range missiles. The UK provided the British Storm Shadow missiles, and Ukraine launched them with NATO support to targets deep in Russia. So the war is escalating, and NATO is actively attacking Russia. That's the case Russia can make. And he's right. Russia would be right in that. European members of NATO want war with Russia. President Trump does not want war with Russia, yet remains tied to NATO as they push towards war with Russia. This is not going to end well. U.S. Treasury sanctions against Russian energy companies is not going to cause Russian President Vladimir Putin to change his mind on his strategic objective of taking the Donbass region in Ukraine as a buffer zone against NATO encroachment. Folks, we're working against each other. And then you'll love this. Trump has been saying all along that European nations from the beginning of the war have been buying Russian oil to fund Russia's war. And Trump kept saying, you're not serious. You don't want to end the war. You keep saying you want peace, but you're buying the Russian oil and funding them. And I want you to stop this. Oh, they voted this week. The UN, the EU voted this week. Yeah, they're going to stop buying Russian oil in 2028. I'm not making that up, folks. In 2028. What the hell? Do you see how President Trump's got a real problem here? Because people want this war. And he's trying to stop it. And I don't know how that's going to work out. So he basically, has Witkoff meeting with them in Florida, but he's leaving. He left for the Middle East on Friday. He's going to Korea. White House confirms Trump to meet with Xi in South Korea as part of Asian tour. United States President Donald Trump will meet with Chinese President Xi Jinping ahead of a major regional economic summit being held in South Korea next week. The White House has confirmed. White House Press Secretary Karen Leavitt said at a press briefing on Thursday that Trump is scheduled to participate in a bilateral meeting with Xi in South Korea on the morning of October 30th. That's coming up real soon, folks. Today's the 25th. The Asia-Pacific Economic Cooperation Summit, an intergovernmental forum promoting free trade among 21 economies located around the Pacific Rim, will be held in the city of Gyeong, South Korea on October 31st to November 1st. And so they're going to have this summit, and Trump, man, he's going to have to pull one out of the hat, because just like we're having trouble with Russia, we're having the same trouble with China. China's not backing down. They're ramping up. They're building their military. They're putting economic pressure. And Steve Bannon basically said, this is a risky move for Trump to go over there and meet with them. That there's a lot on the table here. And he's not sure anything's going to get done. Pray for President Trump this week, folks. Pray for President Trump. He's trying to achieve things that are really hard to achieve. He's really good. And God obviously saved his life for things like this. But boy, just understand, we're in a tough spot. Things are not good. Things are really, really not good. So this past week, the Australian minister came in to Washington, and that was a good thing. United States President Donald Trump and Australian Minister Anthony Albanese on October 20th signed a $3 billion deal about critical rare earth minerals in the White House, and that's a good thing. The White House announced that recoverable resources from these projects are valued and estimated at $53 billion as both countries work to counter China's global dominance in the sector. China, again, is threatening, like I talked last week, to withhold rare earth minerals, which are critical for magnets, which affect everything from your car to your washing machine to military fighter jets. And we've got to start, making our own, which I talked last week about Trump's doing that in Alaska and in Nevada and elsewhere. Trump on October 20th welcomed Albanese to the White House for their first formal meeting to discuss a wide range of bilateral issues, including trade, defense, and nuclear submarine partnership. So Australia is critical to us keeping China in check. And so it's good for Trump to reinforce those relationships, which have been strained because of trade, but it's a multi-nation thing with Japan and South Korea and the Philippines all in the mix as he goes to South Korea for these talks. So that was, on the foreign side of things. I usually don't talk about that until the second part of the show, but this all tied into, what's going on this week with President Trump. On the domestic front, this is really a nice win. I want to hats off to the people in Tennessee. Tennessee scores big win. Court strikes down Biden Title IX rule expanding sex to gender identity in Title IX. This has been the cornerstone of the whole trans movement, was that Title IX protected mentally ill, gender dysphoric people who think they can switch their gender, and that Title IX included gender, and it doesn't. It clearly says sex. And they've been arguing this, and it's been bullcrap and a lie from the beginning, but finally the courts have decided, and this drives a nail in it. Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti announced a significant legal win Thursday in a case involving Biden-era redefinition of the word sex to include gender identity. Tennessee and 14 other states brought suit against the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services in May of 2024, challenging the Biden administration's final rule, which concluded an interpretation on the non-discrimination provisions in the 1957 Affordable Care Act to include gender identity and thus to mandate provisions of gender-affirming care by the federal government. You had to provide this. No, you don't. The suit was filed in the Southern District of Mississippi. On Wednesday, District Court Judge Louis Giraldi Jr. entered a summary judgment in favor of the plaintiff states and denied the defendant's agency's motion to dismiss the case. Tennessee Attorney General Schumer and Mississippi Attorney General Lynn Fitch secured a nationwide victory Wednesday when a federal court struck down the Biden administration's unlawful attempt to impose gender identity mandates on healthcare providers and state Medicaid programs through a regulation implementing Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. The illegal gender identity provision of the rule, which were still in the books until this win, would have forced doctors to perform controversial gender transition procedures and Tennessee taxpayers to fund them. The court's final judgment is not only eliminates these provisions, it makes it more difficult for future administrations to revive them. Hear, hear. This is the fact. They abused the law. They intentionally abused the law to hurt children, to destroy families, right? To mutilate boys and girls. And now we've stopped it. Thank you. Thank you for fighting that fight. Then we had this bizarre thing that happened this week in the middle of everything else. Trump terminates trade negotiations with Canada over an anti-tariff ad featuring Reagan. President Trump suggested the ad campaign was meant to interfere with an upcoming U.S. Supreme Court hearing on administrative tariffs. So basically, President Trump, the lefties have gone to court saying that it's illegal for President Trump to just arbitrarily put tariffs on countries, okay? And so it's been going through the courts, and that's going to the Supreme Court. President Trump, again, we talked about the courts, Supreme Court, reaffirming presidential power. President Trump says past presidents have been able to put on tariffs, and it's a key negotiating tool which has worked to bring businesses back here and to get fair trade, because these other countries have tariffed the heck out of us and we didn't tariff them back. And Canada was one of them. Well, they ran this ad, and I got to play this ad for you. It's real short. The province of Ontario ran this ad to try to embarrass President Trump and maybe affect the court's decision.
When someone says, let's impose tariffs on foreign imports, it looks like they're doing the patriotic thing by protecting American products and jobs. And sometimes for a short while it works, but only for a short time. But over the long run, such trade barriers hurt every American worker and consumer. High tariffs inevitably lead to retaliation by foreign countries and the triggering of fierce trade wars. Then the worst happens. Markets shrink and collapse, businesses and industries shut down, and millions of people lose their jobs. Throughout the world, there's a growing realization that the way to prosperity for all nations is rejecting protectionist legislation and promoting fair and free competition. America's jobs and growth are at stake.
So there's the ad, except for one thing. They cut off 55 seconds of what Reagan said. And Reagan said, we have to use tariffs, and they're good. And President Trump was none too happy. On this post on X, here's the ad rebuttal from Trump. I'll post this for you. On X, Canada spends $75 million on an ad with a modified speech of Ronald Reagan in 1907 against tariffs. Reagan Foundation discovered and considers legal action. Trump discovers and suspends all trade deals with Canada. So the Reagan Library said the Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute learned that the government of Ontario, Canada, created an ad campaign using selective audio and video of President Ronald Reagan delivering his radio address to the nation on free and fair trade dated April 25th, 1987. The ad misrepresents the presidential radio address, and the government of Ontario did not seek nor receive permission to use and edit the remarks. The Ronald Reagan Presidential Foundation and Institute is reviewing its legal options in this matter. We encourage you to watch Ronald Reagan's unedited video on our YouTube channel. And I did post it on X, on my channel. President Trump wrote on Truth Social, the Ronald Reagan Foundation has just announced that Canada has fraudulently used an advertisement which is fake, featuring Ronald Reagan speaking negatively about tariffs. The ad was $75 million. They only did this to interfere with the decision of the U.S. Supreme Court and other courts. Tariffs are very important to the U.S. national security and economy and of the USA. Based on their egregious behavior, all trade negotiations with Canada are hereby terminated. Thank you for your attention to this matter. So Trump ain't too happy, and this is another fraud. The left can never tell the damn truth. They can never tell the damn truth. And the truth of the matter is, and it's proven that it's not hurting our job growth. There's no big tariff hurting of American jobs right now. Matter of fact, the inflation rate dropped again, and the stock market just traded on Friday at another all-time high. But see, guess what? Canada has put trade tariffs on us, on our farmers, for decades that were highly discriminatory, and we did nothing about it until Trump. That's why they're screaming. You got to support President Trump on these tariffs. It's working. It's working. It's a good thing. So then this was another good story domestically. North Carolina Senate approves new U.S. House seat maps with GOP advantage. North Carolina Senate on October 21st passed legislation to implement new district maps for elections to U.S. House of Representatives, which will likely turn one longtime Democratic-leaning district to a Republican seat. Senate Bill 249 would change the boundaries of North Carolina's 1st and 3rd congressional districts, both located on the eastern part of the state, if the bill is passed by the House, which it is likely to be passed. So this is in response to California saying, oh, we're going to jerry rig our districts even more to keep you from Texas adding 5 seats there. It's a war. Illinois is now looking to do it. Virginia's talking about it. Ohio's talking about it. Net. Republicans are going to have like at least 10 more House seats in 2026 than they have right now, which will help secure the majority that we must have to keep President Trump from being impeached for no reason other than we don't like him, okay, after the 2026 House elections. So it's all critical. Good job, North Carolina. If you're in North Carolina and you're a member and you watch this podcast, send a note to your senators and House members and say, thank you for protecting us against the Democrat jerry-rigging of districts. We don't support this at all, but right now we're fighting for the very survival of our nation, okay? So say thank you. You can't just bitch all the time. You got to say thank you once in a while. If you're in North Carolina, give them a pat on the back. I'm going to close this half of the show with this story, which I find really interesting. Trump legal team files $230 million claim against the Justice Department over past federal investigations. So I'm not sure I can blame President Trump for doing this, but I find it's an interesting, dynamic. President Donald Trump's legal team has filed administrative claims with the Justice Department for about $230 million over prior federal investigations. However, Trump said Tuesday he is not personally seeking compensation and would donate any award to charity. Trump's attorney has filed 2 administrative claims with the Department of Justice, alleging that federal law enforcement officials violated his rights during investigations that predated his return to office. They sure as hell did. They sure as hell did. According to individual sources of filing, the first claim submitted in 2023 cites the FBI and special counsel investigations into Russian election interference and possible connections to Trump's 2016 campaign. The second, filed in the summer of 2024, concerns a 2022 FBI search of Trump's Mar-a-Lago residence for classified documents and subsequent criminal cases allegedly mishandling of government records. Both filings allege privacy violations and malicious prosecution, with a second also accusing federal officials of harassment intended to influence the outcome of elections. I think Trump wins those suits. Now, the problem is we, the people, our tax dollars will have to be paid, not the people who did this. But God willing, with, we've indicted Comey, we've indicted, Bolton. There's going to be more indictments coming. Hopefully they will pay a price. And they're going to pay a price by having to pay legal costs. They're going to bankrupt them. But it isn't right that we, the people, have to pay. So Trump says he's going to donate to a charity. I trust he will do that. I have one more side note on this that I want to bring up, because I keep saying, when Trump got a $25 million settlement from YouTube for being banned, I said, where's our money? Where's our money? And now this. Where's our money? Well, our good friend Jake Lang, this is on an X post that he just posted on Friday. Breakings. U.S. Supreme Court just accepted our writ of certiorari for the $240 million January 6th police brutality lawsuit. We have been assigned case number 25-483 and is listed on the official SCOTUS website. Thank you, Oathkeeper attorney Ed Tarpley. So the J6ers are going to court, and sure as hell, they deserve compensation for what was done to them, and we hope they get it. So Trump's not the only one going to get reimbursed, and I'm glad the J6ers are doing the same. All right. So I hope you enjoyed the first half of the podcast. I hope you will watch the Glenn Beck. That's a direct ask. Watch that Glenn Beck video that maybe explains how Trump's going to get us out of this mess, because we're broke as a joke, and I don't know how we're going to get out of this mess. So watch that, and then stay tuned for the second half of the podcast. You've been watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion podcast, and my name is Tom Zawistowski. We'll be back in a few minutes. The We the People Convention News and Opinion radio program is paid for by donors like you. You can donate to the We the People Convention and support our cause by going to wethepeopleconvention.org or by sending your check in any amount to We the People Convention, P.O. Box 6211, Akron, Ohio 44312. When you're playing a video, including our podcast, you'll see this little cloud button. And if you click it, it'll actually download the video to your hard disk. And this works on our podcast page as well. If you're playing our podcast, and it's going to be loud, so I won't play it for much, but there's our podcast playing, and you can see this little, download button. Okay. The other thing you got to notice on our podcast page is that there's a link here where you can send me a message about this podcast. Hey, it was great. Hey, I didn't like it. Something was wrong, or here's a correction, that kind of thing. You can use that link. And then these are the stories that I covered in this particular podcast. And you'll see there's links that go to the stories, to the articles that I used in reporting on that. So you can click on that. You'll also see that you can sign up for our emails and text messages, but you can also watch our podcast on Roku TV and on Amazon Fire TV. And these are the instructions for doing that. So this is all on our podcast page, right on the front page where the yellow button was. So if you click there, this is our podcast page. These are the instructions for watching on Roku TV or Amazon Fire. And I watch our podcast on TV. It just feels more comfortable. So you can do that. We're also on Rumble. If you go to Rumble, you should join Rumble. And, it's Tom Z at WTPC. You'll see our podcast there. So you can get us a lot of different ways, including on Apple iTunes. And then this is an audio version of our podcast. If you click here, it'll just play the audio of the podcast. It will not, show you the video. So people can, listen to that while they're jogging or, working out, working in the yard, or just relaxing and just want to listen to the audio and not watch the video. And again, this is available on phone, on your iPad, on your laptop, on your computer, any way you want. And you can share this, whatever you see. If you're on a page that you really like, and you see an article that you think, geez, I've got to share this article, with someone in my family. You can send them an email by clicking on the little envelope. You can post it on Parler or MeWe. If you click on this, you get all kinds of options, where you can put it on Twitter or Facebook, whatever, which we don't support, but you can do whatever you want. So we ask that you share what you see on our We the People convention site, and that you get more people to look at it, because that's the whole idea here, to help educate people, inform them. And then, as I said before, Link, we're not just about talk, we're about action. And in my podcast every week, which is published every Saturday. So if the new podcast usually comes out every Saturday. And in that podcast, I will ask you to do certain things that will help protect and defend your individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. So that's the We the People Convention website. Come back often, use it to be informed, and share it with others. Thanks a lot. All right, and we are back, and I hope you enjoyed the first part of the podcast. We want you to do things. So we talked about thanking your North Carolina, and Mississippi, our North Carolina House and Senate for passing the redistricting. We asked you to watch the Glenn Beck video to learn more about how we might get out of this mess, and share the stories. In that video, we say we're not on Facebook, we're not on Twitter, we're on X, Tom Z WTPC, we're on Facebook, Tom Zosowski, and We the People Convention. We're on Gab, Getter, MeWe, just about everything out there. Usually Tom Z WTPC. We ask you to follow us and share our information. That's what it's all about. We can affect our situation. We can make our lives better. We can protect and defend our individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity by sharing information and motivating our people, our friends, and people that follow us to talk about it, to be informed. What is the shutdown really about? It's, what's the White House restoration nonsense? Just tell them it's a psyop. They're trying to distract you. Oh, Trump's destroying the White House. Total lie. Obama did worse. Okay. Why? They don't want to talk about the shutdown. You need to talk about the shutdown. The Democrats are going to hurt people. The Democrats are trying to destroy our nation by destroying our government. That's the message. You got to repeat it. Okay. So that we can move forward. All right. So let's get into some things that I think are really good that have to do with law enforcement, because I really haven't given Kash Patel and Joe Bongino and those guys much coverage, and they've been working their butts off. They've been doing great. So let's try to catch up a little bit on that with a couple quick stories. FBI has arrested 28,000 violent criminals since January 20th. President Donald Trump commended the FBI on October 20th through social post, saying that the agency is doing an incredible job, having arrested thousands of criminals and disrupted criminal activity across the nation. Since January 20th, more than 28,000 violent criminals have been arrested, which is record-breaking in that time. Over 6,000 illegal weapons seized, more than 1,700 child predators, and 300 human traffickers were taken off the street. 5,000 innocent children have been rescued, 2,000 criminal enterprises disrupted, 1,900 kilos of fentanyl, enough to kill 125 million people, taken out of the hands of the drug cartels. Historic results, Trump wrote. Okay? They're massive. And then this story came out This is just came out. FBI announces massive indictment against 33 alleged members of drug trafficking organization in Philadelphia. The indictment accuses 33 alleged gang members of conspiracy to distribute controlled substances and dozens of related offenses. Friday, the FBI and Defense Department and Justice Department on Friday announced a massive indictment against over 24 alleged members of the Weymouth Street Drug Trafficking Organization in Kensington, Pennsylvania, as apparently Philadelphia. The indictment includes 33 alleged gang members, a conspiracy to distribute controlled substance, and dozens of related offenses. The organization was known for peddling and distributing fentanyl, heroin, and cocaine. FBI Director Kash Patel said the operation could serve as an example of law enforcement reclaiming violent corridors from gangs and touted the years of collaboration between the Bureau, Philadelphia Police Department, and U.S. Attorney's Office. This takedown is how you safeguard American cities from coast to coast. We have permanently removed a drug trafficking organization off the streets of Philadelphia. And the police chief of Philadelphia was ecstatic. He said, this is awesome. This is what we needed. So again, not all, the lefties are pushing back. Some of them are helping, and it's working. It's working. And then, this was the big story of the week. Because it's real sexy and everybody want to talk about it. But I'm not surprised. I'm sure you guys aren't surprised. NBA gambling scandal, live updates. 4 teams, 4 mafia families teamed up for $7 million scheme, officials say. A bombshell illegal sports betting scheme involving 4 NBA teams and 4 mafia crime families netted upwards of $7 million over 2 years. The FBI announced Thursday in a historic bust. Portland Trailblazer head coach Chauncey Phillips, Miami Heat guard Terry Rozier, and former NBA player Damon Jones are among those indicted in the stunning takedown of 2 separate illegal gambling-related cases. 31 people, including members of the Bonanno, Gambino, Genovese, and Lucchesi mafia families, and coaches and players from Charlotte Hornets, Portland Trailblazers, Los Angeles Lakers, and Toronto Raptors have been arrested carried out in arrests carried out between January of 2022 and March of 2024. Okay, so long and short of this is they fixed basketball games because we have sold our souls to the sports betting industry. You can't turn on your TV, the radio, or anywhere and not see sports betting promoted. Okay? So, wow, what a shock that they would fix games, that the mob would be involved. The other part of this was that they apparently were using these players to entice rich people to gamble in card games. And then they went through these elaborate things like X-ray machines under the table that could read the cards, and cameras in the deck thing where the cards are being distributed, and rigging the deck. Really elaborate, sci-fi type stuff to steal money from these people. One guy lost $1.8 million, and the players were there to lure them in. Right? You got a chance to play against these NBA players. It's disastrous. But here's the bottom line. Sports gambling is bad. Gambling is bad. And here's the part that I just hate the most, because I know people who love it. But in Ohio, the state of Ohio gave permission for there to be sports gambling in our state. But the people who run those, get this, if you win too often, they block you. The freaking thing is so rigged that only the losers can play. I'm not making it up. Go look it up in your state. Why would our state sanction something that's that criminal, that's that rigged? You know why? They get money. The individual legislators get money. There's billions of dollars in this sports gambling now. And now what are they doing? They're wrecking pro sports. And then get this. You love this. This week, the NCAA, in their infinite wisdom, met and passed a rule that said it's okay for college athletes to gamble on pro sports. Right? How's that for a good idea? And again, they're already betting. People are already betting on college sports. And there's already been instances of college sports rigging games, college athletes rigging games because of the betting. It's a disaster. Folks, again, this republic is for a moral and religious people and is totally unsuitable for any other. This is immoral, among a whole bunch of other things. And I wasn't surprised to see those arrests, and I'm sure you weren't either. Okay, this is another interesting story that we are moving towards. I don't know if you want to call it the Monroe Doctrine or what you want to call it, but President Trump ain't fooling around. So we've been blowing up drug boats in international waters outside of Venezuela. Okay, that's on the east coast of South America. Now we just took out a Colombian drug boat in the Pacific on the west side of Latin America, of South America. And so we're going full war, it looks like, to stop the drug dealing and the Marxist infiltration of China in South America. The U.S. military has carried out a missile strike on a small boat off the coast of Colombia, marking the first such operation in the Pacific Ocean as part of its ongoing campaign against drug trafficking cartels. The strike reportedly killed 2 people. A video released by War Secretary Pete Hegseth showed the vessels what appeared to be brown packages in the vessel before it was destroyed. In a statement, Hegseth compared the drug traffickers to al-Qaeda, saying, just as al-Qaeda waged war on our homeland, these cartels are waging war on our border and our people, and there will be no refuge or forgiveness, only justice. The latest operation expands the Trump administration's anti-cartel campaign, which has previously focused on the Caribbean region, particularly Venezuela. The White House has not explained why the campaign has now shifted to the Pacific. Since September, the administration has conducted several strikes on maritime targets it claims were transporting narcotics. There's something bigger going on here, folks. And you want proof of that? How about this? Look at the screen here if you can. Department of War announces deployment of Gerald Ford Carrier Strike Group to the Caribbean in support of drug interdiction efforts. The U.S. military continues targeting drug vessels from Venezuelan transnational criminal organizations. The Department of War is sending an entire U.S. carrier strike group into the region. They're pulling our Navy assets from the Middle East to South America. And Trump just said this week he's considering doing land strikes. Now, we're blowing up their little boats and a submarine. I talked about that last week. But they're talking about now making strikes in Venezuela and Colombia directly. That's war. So that should be on your radar. But it's working. This is Trump fentanyl crackdown is choking cartels' fentanyl flow into the U.S. And isn't that what he's trying to do? Right? So, here's what's going on with that. Cartels have severely pumped the brakes on trafficking fentanyl in the United States, and experts say that thanks to Trump administration's aggressive crackdown. Fentanyl seizures year over year at the southern border have been cut roughly in half almost every month since President Trump took office, according to Customs and Border Protection data. In June, it was only 42% decrease, but there was a 70% drop in May. According to reports, the plunge isn't because the authorities are catching less fentanyl, it's because cartels aren't tracking as much. They aren't sending as much in. They said a suite of interconnected Trump policies that enhance border security and increase targeting of cartels in U.S. and Mexico agencies under pressure from Trump have forced the criminal organizations to scale back operations. The statistics are true reflections of the amount of drugs that are coming here. Center for Immigration Studies resident fellow in law and policy Andrew Arthur told the Washington Free Beacon. Consequently, the quantity of drugs is dropping because the Trump administration has made it a priority. It has made the Mexican government make it a priority as well. The cartels are deliberately taping off the amount of fentanyl they're sending to the United States. The cartels are scared. The findings underscore a stark contrast with how former President Joe Biden handled the border issue. You think? Biden administration's permissive approach led to a crisis resulting in more than 8 million encounters at the southern border, according to Trump Department of Homeland Security, and enough fentanyl seized to kill 14 billion people. Okay? So it's working. And the point is, as President Trump said, he said this week in one of these impromptu White House press things, they're killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. And for decades, no one did anything. But Trump is now, and that's a good thing. And if that leads to the overthrow of Maduro in Venezuela and the other commie in Colombia and the people of South America getting their countries back, I guess maybe it's okay. But how does this fit with President Trump saying he doesn't start wars, he ends wars? Not sure. Certainly something to keep an eye on, but he ain't messing around. A carrier group? Whoa. So, we're going to see what happens. Okay, now back on the domestic side, there's some good news that the Ninth Circuit Court gives Trump okay to use National Guard to stop Antifa violence in Portland. This was a huge decision because every time Trump tries to put in the troops to fix things, whether it be D.C., Nashville, we'll talk about that in a minute, not Nashville, Memphis, Tennessee, Chicago, L.A., Portland, they want to go to court. Well, this is pretty definitive. Trump administration got a significant shot in the arm on Monday, compliments of the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals. Yes, the Ninth Circuit. This latest boost involves the administration's federalization and deployment of National Guard in Oregon. The appellate court has now granted administration's motion for a stay pending appeal. And basically, what it says, in a nutshell, the court found that it is likely that President lawfully exercised his statutory authority under 10 U.S.C. 1246-3, which authorizes the federalization of National Guard when the president is unable with regular forces to execute the laws of the United States. Okay? So what that means is that ICE agents are in Portland trying to keep Antifa from burning down the federal courthouse and the ICE building there. The local police won't help them, and the ICE agents are police officers. So, like in D.C., like in L.A., he's going to bring in the federal troops and take out these ICE people. And I think it's critical. I think if we don't do this, we are never going to stop the insurrection, as Victor Davis Hanson keeps saying, that the left is conducting to overthrow our government. These punks, these pathetic individuals in Portland who've been burning things and hurting people, and including the local residents of Portland, have been doing this for 5 years now. It's got to stop. But here's part of the problem. The Portland police have been helping them. This Portland police response to any ICE incident shows exactly why the National Guard is being sent in. Journalist Nick Sorter caught on video one of the big reasons that there is such an ongoing problem with Antifa and then anti-ICE crew in Portland. The law enforcement government has not taken the situation in hand. He reported that some of the groups were beaming spotlights in the eyes of DHS agents at the Portland ICE facility. First, they were hiding behind a sign. You can see these people running behind the row of Portland police who are standing there for cover. Then, one of the agents comes out to talk to the Portland police officer. So Antifa is shining spotlights at the DSH agents so they can't see what the Antifa is doing. Then, when they run behind Portland police officers, and the Portland police officers do nothing. So the DSH agent tells the police the woman was running behind them, and one officer replies that they don't know why she's running. Really? Do they want us to think they are clueless? They failed to address the situation for months. Sort of said that people ended up just walking away. This is a golden example that explains why they needed National Guard, as Assistant Attorney General Harman Dillion observed in response to Sorter's video about the Portland police. This is exactly why the Ninth Circuit just said Portland can send in the National Guard, because the police, the regular law enforcement, are failing there. And I'll post that story so you can see the video. I didn't do a very good job of explaining that, but that's what's going on. That's what's going on. So what do the Dems do in response to all this? What if you are Marxists, and they are, okay? OAC and Bernie Sanders, they're commies. Kami Mandami running for mayor of New York. They are communists. They want to overthrow the United States. BLM's leaders said that right in their documents. Our goal is the violent overthrow of the United States. So the Democratic Party has been taken over by these Marxists. They are not the Democratic Party. They're the Communist Party USA. And the No Kings rally wasn't run by Democrats, even though every Democrat spoke there, because that's their voting base. It's run by the communists. So what would you do if you were a communist and ICE was locking up your army? and cracking down on your funders. What would you do? Insane. Democrats to create master ICE tracker to warn illegals about ICE activity. The Democratic Party is actually going to spend money to create apps so you can track ICE agents. And boy, isn't that what happened in Texas where they shot ICE agents? That's what they want, folks. They want to kill ICE agents. And what are ICE agents doing? What are ICE agents doing? It is against the law to break into the United States. That immigration law is federal law. If you are here illegally, you should be arrested and deported. That's what they're doing. And the majority of Americans say, yes, absolutely deport illegals who are rapists, murderers, drug dealers, what have you. But the majority of Americans also say deport all illegals. We've talked about it. ICE is doing what we voted for and what the people want. What are the Democrats doing? They're trying to stop them. Well, why would you try to stop them? Oh, democracy. Preach to me about democracy, right? Give me a break. Senate Democrats aren't satisfied yet with the amount of violence directed at ICE, so they are planning to create what they call a master ICE tracker to warn illegal aliens about ICE activity and give Antifa militants more information about where exactly to position themselves for ambushes. Assaults on ICE agents have skyrocketed by 1,000%, and the violence directed at them has escalated from throwing Subway sandwiches to taking pot shots at them and ramming cars into agents. That happened in Chicago. But to Democrats, ICE is the modern Gestapo. It seems like this level of violence and resistance to law enforcement is not nearly enough. Ethically, this is appalling. Morally, it is an implicit aid to committing violence. Politically, it seems like it wouldn't make sense until you dig in a little deeper. Democrats have been trying to escape the accusation that they have shut down the government because they want to provide health insurance to illegal aliens. And in polls, the Democrats are losing on the losing side of the illegal immigration issue. On its face, you would think that going so far as to, on a limb, choosing the side of illegal aliens over law enforcement would be not where you want to go. But think again. That's what their radical base wants. And that's what they're doing. But don't talk about moral. Don't talk about ethics. It's illegal. Pam Bondi, arrest him. When are we going to arrest Pritzker, the mayor of Chicago, Cory Booker or Hakeem Jeffries, or one of these people who are calling for assaults on our federal law enforcement? When are we going to arrest them? Folks, they're not playing around. We can't be playing around. There are laws that say you can't do that. And you can put an ICE tracker out there. And anyone who pays for that and is behind it needs to be arrested because they are planning the assault on federal police officers. My God, how can it be any more illegal than that? And again, I said, why are they doing this? They're protecting their constituents. They're claiming, see again, the whole thing is a fraud because their whole thing is they're just breaking in. If you're brown or black, they're arresting you and deporting you. No, they're not deporting people who are citizens. They're only deporting illegals. And we want that. And then they're going to these cities and it works. It works. You want more proof? Washington, D.C. is clearly proof. Right? Clearly proof. Let's report on Memphis. We talked about them going in, but we haven't reported on what happened. Trump's Memphis crime crackdown dismantles gangs, recovers missing children. Oh, that'd be bad, huh? We wouldn't want to do that in Memphis, would we? Law enforcement authorities in Memphis, Tennessee have made 1,309 arrests and recovered 72 missing children as part of a significant crime crackdown launched in September under the direction of President Donald J. Trump. The operation, established through a presidential memorandum signed in September, created the Memphis Safe Task Force and authorized the deployment of National Guard troops to assist in tackling violent crime and gang activity in what is considered one of the most dangerous cities in the country. Without doubt, Memphis, Tennessee, man, was bad. According to White House officials, those arrests include over 100 confirmed gang members from groups such as MS-13 and Gangster Disciples. The crackdown has also led to the seizure of 247 firearms and the apprehension of suspects involved in serious crimes, including aggravated rape of a child and kidnapping. Attorney General Pam Bondi praised the initiative, stating, "From arresting more than 100 gang members to locating more than 70 missing children, our brave federal agents and local authorities have done incredible work to protect the good people of Memphis. Tolerating crime is a choice. Under President Trump, we refuse to accept the victimization of innocent American citizens and will continue making our cities safe again." Tennessee Governor Bill Reed expressed strong support for the operation, suggesting it could continue indefinitely. He emphasized the need for a sustained approach to address the city's longstanding issues with violent crime. You can go on any social media and see story after story, mostly of black people in Memphis saying, "Man, I can't believe it. I've never seen anything like this. It's incredible. I can walk the streets. My kids are playing outside." It works. That's why the left wants to stop it. That's why the Democrat, Marxist, Socialist, Communists want to stop it. They want to hurt the American people. They want to destroy our economy, our families, our culture, our values, our Constitution. They are the enemy, your enemy, my enemy, the enemy of the West. We must defeat them. This is what Trump's doing, and you should support it with all you've got. And to show that he's not a king and he's not a tyrant, I told you last week he was going to surge troops into San Francisco. This week, Trump halts plan to surge federal agents into San Francisco after talking to the mayor. And some other people. President Donald Trump said on October 23rd that he will not send federal agents into San Francisco this week. The president had planned to send the agents in to the city to crack down on illegal immigration and violent crime, but called out the plans after speaking to the city's mayor about recent efforts by local law enforcement to bring down crime. Trump said in a social media post that he's preparing to surge San Francisco on October 25th, but that friends of his from the Bay Area asked him to pause the deployment in order because San Francisco Mayor Daniel Lurie is making progress in reducing crime. And he said, "Isn't it amazing what happens when you just talk to each other?" Now, I happened to see a podcast this week that led me to the same conclusion. This Mayor Lurie is like the best mayor San Francisco has had in decades. He's not woke, and they are fixing crime. Crime statistics are down. But remember when the Chinese, when Xi was coming to California and Gavin Newsom cleaned up San Francisco like overnight? All the homeless were gone. All the drugs were gone. The city was cleaned. And then after Xi left, their master, the guy that pays for all their stuff, after he left, it all went back. Well, the new mayor is cleaning things up. But apparently there's a section of Main Street, San Francisco, that is it's a drug, marketplace. And the people I watched on this podcast said, that's got to be cleaned up. And if Trump sent in troops to just take that out, that would be great for San Francisco. Well, apparently the mayor says they're going to do that. But Trump said, "I had 4 or 5 calls, and I think they're making progress on their own." He said, "That would be the greatest. I mean, if they could do that, that'd be great." So we're holding off the surge, everybody. We're going to let them see if they can do it. But if they don't, then we'll come back in. How's that a tyrant? How's that? Oh, what did the Democrats say? Newsom's idiot, social media team. Donald Trump is using, deportation of illegals as a cover for him taking federal control of major cities. Honest to God, that Trump wants to, use martial law to take over San Francisco or Chicago or whatever. You're idiots. You're complete idiots. No one believes you when you make such stupid statements. And geez, if his goal was to take over major cities, why wouldn't he surge the troops into San Francisco? Because you're a bunch of liars. And you, the viewers of this podcast, need to expose those lies. Because they are. That's what they are. They're lies. Okay. Moving on. We talk about all the bad things. I try to bring you some good things. This is a good thing. Mass shooting at America's busiest airport averted thanks to a tip from family. Police say police stopped a potential mass shooting on Monday, this Monday, when a 49-year-old man was arrested at Hartsfield-Jackson Atlanta International Airport after he allegedly threatened to shoot up the nation's busiest airport before he drove there armed with a semi-automatic rifle. Atlanta Mayor Andre Dickens said at a press conference that a major tragedy was averted. The mayor said the suspect from Cartersville, Georgia, and is mentally challenged. Cartersville is located about 50 miles northwest of Atlanta. The suspect was identified as Billy Joe Cagle, a convicted felon who said over a live-streamed video that he planned on shooting people at the airport, according to Atlanta Police Department Chief Darren Schneierbaum. After family members saw Cargill's video, they notified the Cartersville Police Department, which then notified the Atlanta Police Department. Cargill's family also warned police that he was in possession of a firearm. Just 14 minutes later, after Atlanta police were notified of the threat, Cagle was arrested in the airport. Police found a semi-automatic rifle in his vehicle, which was parked outside. Security footage shows that he was basically casing out the TSA area to go get his gun and start shooting people. That's the way it needs to work, folks. We need to stop it before it happens. And they did. Congratulations to the family, to his family, for acting immediately. 14 minutes, man. It was a matter of minutes before a disaster could have happened. Great job. Great job. This story really upset me. I don't know why. It just triggered me. And so you're not going to like it. But I need to help you understand the insanity of the world we're living in and the left that literally hates humanity, that wants to see people die, that want people to starve to death, freeze to death. You know, we're going to cancel fossil fuels. We're going to hurt your food. They're nuts. I think this shows how nuts they are. You're not going to believe this. This is just sick. It didn't last long enough. Court reportedly lets refugee convicted of raping a teen stay in the country because he didn't rape her long enough. No, that's what they said. Here it is. A Swedish court ruled that an Eritrean refugee, Eritrean. Do any of you guys know where Eritrea is? I had to look it up. It's a small country at the Horn of Africa that has 3.7 million people. Never heard of Eritrean, E-R-I-T-R-E-N, refugee, who's now in Sweden, convicted of raping then 16-year-old Maya Aberg, will not be deported after serving his sentence due to the duration of the incident. 18-year-old Yazi Mohammed allegedly sexually assaulted a teenager. He didn't allegedly, he was convicted. He assaulted her on September 1st of 2024, a year ago, while she was walking home from her shift at McDonald's after missing the bus. Okay? Aberg's family immediately reported the incident, according to the outlet. Mohammed was sentenced to 3 years in prison, but the Alto Noranda Court of Appeals reportedly ruled that the rape did not last long enough to be classified as an exceptionally serious crime, so it did not necessitate deportation. Raping a 16-year-old girl is now okay if you do it quick. What the hell? What the hell? This is who you're fighting, folks. This is evil. It's not just insane, it's evil. That's what they're doing overseas. That's what they want to do here. That's what Kami Mandami wants to bring to New York City, right? You think he's going to be hard on illegals? You think he's going to be, how about the rape gangs of Muslims in Europe, in England, who are just raping little white girls? And they're throwing their parents in jail if they try to fight back. They want to bring that to New York City, and you dumbasses are going to vote for that. Yeah, we'll see how that turns out. That's real. And you got to see it, even though it's ugly as sin. You got to see it. And then speaking of things that aren't real, I put this story out, and I bet it shocked some of you guys. Is Fetterman a Dems psyop? Put this out Late in the week, this guy, Jet Cross from Cypher News, wrote this piece, and it's really interesting. Senator John Fetterman isn't a Dem with an identity crisis. He's a psyop. You don't erase a radical past, you rebrand it. When conservatives crave unity more than truth, deception becomes easy. You can see the entire blueprint if you just stop staring at the dirty hoodie long enough. Every piece of his history lines up with a case file. The Clinton-era AmeriCorps progressive grooming ground, the Obama-style activist mayor years, LGBT flags flapping off the State House, a hard push for pardons and commutations that law enforcement policy hated, and a Marxist BLM worldview we quietly scrubbed the second it turned inconvenient. None of that vanished, guys. It just got repackaged. The story the media and way too many on the right are peddling is simple. Finally, a sane working-class Democrat who tells it like it is. John Fetterman. Come on, guys. Really? You're buying this snake oil? This isn't some political evolution of John Fetterman. It's backroom engineering by slick consultants who get paid to obscure amounts of money to turn activists into presidents. Just ask Barry. Somewhat around 2022, Fetterman's team flipped the switch from progressive radical to common sense populist. He possibly saw the squad collapsing in his own insanity and decided to switch gears. Smart move, actually. But let's be real. It's the same guy, voting the same way, just wrapped in new optics. Fetterman didn't stumble onto the moderate middle. He discovered the marketing lane. He's testing out the next Democrat prototype, a reasonable leftist who talks like he hates the radicals but still feeds them the same machine. A populist costume for a Marxist wiring. Fetterman's rebrand isn't random. It's patterned, calculated, and documented. His history reads like a manual for building the next Democratic psyops, starting in the activist trenches, collecting the right allies, reframing the optics, and wait for America to forget who you were or think you had some come-to-Jesus awakening. Before he was Pennsylvania's everyman senator, John Fetterman was a poster child for Clinton-era activism. His political DNA starts with AmeriCorps, the government-funded service program built to funnel radical young progressives into government-approved activism. There's where he learned how to mobilize, moralize policy, and dress ideology up as compassion. This story goes on with, it brings the receipts. It shows you videos and everything. Despite what he says, despite what John Fetterman says, and Fox News puts him on and everybody praises him and all that stuff, he votes 96% of the time with the Democrats. Okay? He's a fraud. He's a psyop. Go read that article. You'll be convinced by the time you're done if you're not convinced already. So this is another thing that we're watching is how much overreach is the federal government doing, because we're fighting against that. And they're talking about getting rid of rules and regulations. And then this story comes out. EPA rule could turn every solar home into a federal energy asset. This is, again, confiscation by the feds. New EPA rule could make your home part of a critical infrastructure of the federal government. A new Environmental Protection Agency proposal is drawing sharp criticism from energy freedom advocates who say it represents an unprecedented power grab over private energy use in American homes. The draft rule, released quietly for public comment last week, would classify residential solar panels, battery systems, and backup generators, your backup generator, as part of the nation's critical energy infrastructure. Supporters inside the agency claim the designation is meant to enhance cybersecurity and grid stability. But critics say it's really about extending federal oversight into private property and punishing energy independence. This is government's latest way of telling Americans they don't actually own their own power, said Representative Thomas Massey, a longtime advocate of off-grid energy. If you control your electricity, you control your life, and that's what bureaucrats can't stand. The proposed regulation, formerly titled the Home Energy Integration and Reliance Framework, would require homeowners to generate or store their own electricity, to register their systems with federal databases, and comply with new safety and interoperability standards, right? You got to connect yours to the grid so we can use it when we want to. In plain English, that means your rooftop solar system or Tesla Powerwall could now fall under EPA oversight. Yeah, we're not for that. We're not for that. So the EPA just put this up for public comment this week. You need to go to the EPA website and say, no, not only no, hell no. That's your private property. Your gas generator to protect against outages is your property, right? Your solar cells are you bought them. Now, yeah, you got a government subsidy for that, but that's not your fault. You just played by the rules, but now you own it, and they can't have the energy unless you decide you want to sell it to them when you want for how much you want, right? That's what we're about. Individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, not government overreach. Might want to visit the EPA site and comment on that. This is another thing that I don't even know what the hell is going on. Trump calls on ranchers to lower beef prices. Officials review plan to rebuild the herd. This is a mess. President Donald Trump's administration intensified efforts on Wednesday to combat raising beef prices, calling on domestic cattle ranchers to lower prices for consumers while also releasing a multi-agency strategy to restock the nation's depleted cattle herd. Beef prices in the United States have eclipsed record levels, as you all know, after a prolonged drought that has impacted grazing lands and elevated feed expenses, forcing ranchers to reduce herd sizes. The U.S. cattle inventory currently is at its lowest level since 1951. That ain't good, kids, and has been shrinking amid import restrictions, including the suspension of Mexican cattle shipment due to pest concerns and traffic constraint on Brazilian supplies, all while consumer demand remains strong. So Trump has been helping the ranchers by keeping cattle from Mexico and Brazil to come in, but the prices aren't going down, okay? And that's a problem for Trump because people are mad that their grocery prices are high. According to data from U.S. government agencies, the national cattle inventory has declined to 86.7 million head by the beginning of this year, the smallest number since 1951. Lean and extra lean ground beef reached an all-time high of $8 per pound in July before easing slightly to $7.95 in August. A 32% increase from the $6.09 low in 2015 and a 42% above the 2017 amount of $5.64. Similar, boneless USDA choice sirloin steaks climbed to $14.32 per pound in August, more than 77% higher than the $8 per pound in 2017. So Trump's got a problem, but then he compounds it. He compounds the problem. Trump's baffling beef bungalow. The Trump administration has tried to throw an economic lifeline to the government of Argentina. President Javier Milei, who's in economic trouble, whose economic struggles have led to considerable tumult where U.S. farmers aren't too happy about it. The Trump administration sought to extend an economic lifeline to the government of Argentina by basically giving them a $40 billion bailout with the idea of purchasing beef from Argentina. So now he's trying to tell the ranchers lower prices. And now he's thinking about importing $40 billion worth of beef from Argentina. President Trump and his cabinet is working every day to lower prices for consumers. While prices for other proteins such as egg, pork, and chicken have declined in recent months, beef prices remain elevated. This is due to the perfect storm of sustained increase in consumer demand for beef, coupled with prolonged decreases in the supply of live cattle. Theoretically, increasing the supply of beef in the market would lower prices and ease the burden on consumers, but the cattle ranchers, who are big Trump supporters, are not happy campers that you're going to bring in this beef from Argentina. So Trump has got a real political hot potato here, and the ranchers are saying, how's this MAGA? How is this America first? You said every decision would be to put America first, and you're putting Argentina first. Well, they got a point. But Trump's got a point too. You got to raise the herd and cut prices, damn it. And there's also problems with these processing places. There's only like 4 companies that process all the beef in the country, and they're controlled by China, I believe. And Trump hasn't done anything about that. And then there's all kinds of complaints in that article about the U.S. Department of Agriculture just being a mess, not being clear on their rules. So while they're doing everything they can and Trump is doing so much good, he's off base on this, and we got to get this fixed. But we got to get the price of beef down. We have to. But on the other hand, we got to help our ranchers. So just wanted to bring that to your attention. But that explains to you why you can't afford to eat beef anymore. We're hardly eating any beef, Nan and I. I mean, it's just too expensive. We can't afford it. Okay, just a few more stories. We'll get a little lighter here at the end of this podcast. Those are some pretty tough stories, but let's talk about some things that are pretty interesting. This one, I don't know, folks. You got to have it on your radar. It's time. I've held off for weeks not talking about this, but NASA activates Earth Defense Group over concerns of Manhattan-sized comet with possible alien technology. You heard that right. Possible alien technology. They're battening down the heavenly hatches. A NASA-backed planetary defense group has reportedly begun efforts to pinpoint comet 3I Atlas after it was observed emitting an alloy not seen in nature and exhibiting other strange behaviors. The cosmic anomaly, a Manhattan, the size of the island of Manhattan, interstellar object that potentially has alien technology on board, has been added to the list of threats by the International Asteroid Warning Network, a NASA-coordinated world coalition of organizations and space experts who collaborate to detect and monitor potentially hazardous asteroids and near-Earth objects to assess their potential impacts on Earth. 3I Atlas is reported the first interstellar object to be targeted by their campaigns, prompting a campaign to hone detection skills and prep Earth for a potential threat from beyond, whatever that means. The celestial object, which was photographed by the Hubble telescope on July 21st, has notably displayed a host of unusual characteristics that seem to defy normal comet behavior. These include an anti-tail. A jet of particles that points toward the sun instead of away from it is as typical. And the fact that it was seen emitting a plume which contains 4 grams of nickel per second with no evidence of iron, a phenomena unheard of comets. The alloy, nickel terracarbonyl, has only been previously witnessed in human manufacturing, Harvard astrophysicist Dr. Avi Loeb told the Post. Loeb has previously mentioned the object's non-gravitational acceleration and anomalous trajectory that will bring it suspiciously close to Jupiter, Venus, and Mars, which he points out is somewhat far-fetched paper, could indicate that it was an alien probe sent to recon our solar system. In accordance, IAWN will conduct a comet campaign from November 27th, 25 through July 27th or January 27th, 2026 to refine methods of pinpointing Atlas's exact location. So what they're basically saying is there's this thing that looked like a comet, but as it's coming into the solar system, it doesn't act like a comet. A comet is on a trajectory. It's kind of like a straight path. This is not on a straight path. It's maneuvering to get a look at all the planets. It also has a plume that goes towards the sun instead of away from the sun, like all comets do, and it's emitting this mineral, nickel, that we've never seen before. What is it? I don't know. There's some wild talk on X and on Facebook and on all these sites that follow interstellar stuff, but it certainly is unique, and that's why I brought it to your attention today. Okay. We being invaded from the outer space? I don't think so, but this certainly is worth looking at, and I'm glad they're looking at it. Okay, we'll wrap up with a couple more really good stories. I took great happiness in this story. Oxford Union President-elect ousted after celebrating Charlie Kirk's assassination. If you're watching this and not listening to it, you'll see a picture of Charlie Kirk very soon before he was assassinated at the Oxford Union in Britain, debating this guy who was their president-elect at the time and just making a fool of him. And then when Charlie Kirk got assassinated, that guy celebrated it. And I thought, man, that's wrong. That's really wrong. George Aberrone, the president-elect of the Oxford Union Debating Society, attached to England's Oxford University, has been removed from his position following a no-confidence vote by members of the prestigious institution. The decision followed the leak of a WhatsApp message and an Instagram post in which Aberrone reacted to the assassination of Turning Point USA founder Charlie Kirk by writing, "Charlie Kirk got shot. Let's effing go." The comment sparked immediate backlash, prompting an internal vote in which 1,228 members supported the motion to oust him against 500 who opposed it. Aberone, elected in June, had debated Charlie Kirk earlier this year at the Oxford Union on topics including toxic masculinity and male suicide. Aberone has denied that his comments reflected his true beliefs, saying, "In that moment of shock, I reacted impulsively. Those words did not reflect my values." Despite submitting a motion of confidence in himself, the union stated he is deemed to have resigned following the results of the no confidence vote. In an open letter signed by numerous Oxford Union alumni, including former presidents, condemned Aberone remarks on Kirk's assassination and called for his resignation. The letter emphasized that while the signatories held diverse political views, they were unified in their opposition to his reaction to Kirk's death. Your public reaction to the fatal shooting displayed a callousness inconsistent with the union president's duties to safeguard free and open debate, rendering it untenable for you to accede to the office of the president, their letter said, forcing his resignation. Hear, hear. There is some good in the world. There is even some good left in England, and we're glad to see that. We are also glad to see this. Bible sales surged following killing of Charlie Kirk. A 36% jump in September compared with a year earlier indicates a religious revival for some in the U.S. And we've been talking about that, but now talk is cheap. We deal with facts. We deal with truth. We believe in truth. And that's what this podcast is about. And so here are the facts. In the aftermath of Charlie Kirk killing on a Utah college campus in September, Bible sales have surged. First reported by the Wall Street Journal, sales spiked by 36% in the month compared to 2024, totaling 2.4 million Bibles sold in September alone. That's a lot of Bibles. September brought a wave of troubling events, violence, geopolitical tension, and economic uncertainty, underscoring a pattern. In times of crisis, more people turn to faith for comfort and support, Brenda Connor, an analyst for Circa Can Bookscan, told the Wall Street Journal. Eternal Word News Religious Catalog, part of the Eternal Word News Network, the registered parent company, also confirmed a similar spike with a 65% increase in the number of Bibles sold and an 80% increase in sales when comparing numbers for the last 2 months and what was sold in the same period in 2024. And other publishers are experiencing an increase as well, including Ascension Press, home to the Bible in a Year podcast featuring Father Smith Schmidt, which also airs via the Eternal Word News Network. Ascension President and CEO Jonathan Strait told your register that since the assassination of Charlie Kirk, we've seen a remarkable rise in interest in Scripture, which is a clear sign of a deeper hunger people have to know and follow God. Across the country, more people are turning to the Bible, whether returning to their faith or rediscovering it for the first time. At Ascension, Strait continued, we've witnessed Unravel through the Bible in a Year, which has not been downloaded more than 900 million times, and through the Ascension app, with #1 Catholic Bible app in the App Store. So 900 million times they've downloaded this app about the Bible. In the aftermath of the tragic shooting of the political activist who was very outspoken about his own Christian faith, stories flooded social media of men and women sharing their concerns to buy a Bible, including, sites after site, people testifying. I bought a Bible for the first time. Calling it the Charlie Kirk effect, hundreds of people have also posted viral videos about the decision to head to church on Sunday mornings, including some who have never set foot in a church in their lives. Speaking at her late husband's memorial service on September 21st, Erica Kirk said, Charlie's birth has reignited a spark of faith for millions in our country. And he has. And that's what it's all about. And that's what we will always remember and we'll always talk about. We will fulfill his mission by completing American spiritual revival. Because as I talked to you last week and will remind you every week, we cannot have self-governments. We cannot have a religious revival. We cannot have our country, our republic, without a religious revival. Charlie Kirk's assassination is the spark that ignited into a flame, and those are the statistics. It's not your imagination. It's not my imagination. It's happening, and it has to happen if we are to restore our nation, and in fact, the West. We must do it here, and then it must flow to England and Europe and all across the world. It's about religion. It's not about politics. And if you don't understand that, you better start reading the Bible and going to church and reread the Constitution, okay? Because that's what it's about. So I'm going to wrap up our podcast for this week with that. Tell other people about this. It's important that you share our podcast with everyone you can. Post it, your links to the podcast on your social media. Send people emails. And more importantly, send us your comments. Write to me at info@WeThePeopleConvention. info@WeThePeopleConvention.org. We read your emails. You send us videos, okay? Many of the stories in today's podcast came from you. The John Fetterman story came from someone in our podcast audience. This is your podcast. We just produce it and present it. And it's all about one thing, the truth. It's about making you informed so that you can act to protect and defend your personal individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, your family's individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, your community's individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity, and our nation's individual freedom, liberty, and prosperity. That's why you watch this podcast. That's why you share it with others. So I hope you'll enjoy the final days of October. It's hard to believe. November's next week. Fall is in full swing here in Northeast Ohio. Enjoy it. Be happy. Enjoy your family. And fight to protect and defend our nation. Because if we don't, nobody else will. No one else is going to protect your individual freedom and liberty and prosperity if you won't lift a finger to do the same. Okay? So have a good week. We'll be back again next week. You've been watching the We the People Convention News and Opinion Podcast. My name is Tom Zawistowski. May God bless you and yours, and may God continue to bless the United States of America. See you next week.
Can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight